Hi everyone, and welcome to this module on built systems. So I want to kind of cover a little bit of what we've done so far. So in the last module, we introduced Node and NPM, which are sort of foundational steps to get us to this next step, which is how can we use Node and NPM and modules and put them together in a front-end project. And the answer is that we have to use a build system of some sort, because front-end projects, they don't have they have changing standards over times, and while modules have become native, we've started using them. The way that you actually make and export modules in like a real software project gets a little dicey, and so we're not really able to import dependencies like we should unless we use something like a build system. And that's where that's where Webpack comes into play. And so Webpack is a module bundler. And what that means is that it takes all of our stuff and it spits out the static assets that a web application needs, which is just JavaScript, CSS, pictures, and whatnot. But it takes all our dependencies that could have imports or exports and bundles them together into a single thing. And this does a number of things for us. One, it allows us to set up a lot of interesting ways of coding. So you could have pre-compile systems for CSS, and you can have a general set of dependencies that you use in your project and import them and export them and use it together. In the end, Webpack's going to run and process those assets and bundle them together. And so that's what we're going to do. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a brand new folder. And we're going to set up a project that will be ready to go for Webpack. So just like we saw in the last module, we're going to get a package.json with npm init -y -y. There we go. So we got a package.json set up, ready to go. And we're also going to do a couple of things here. So first thing that we want to do is get Webpack installed. And if we go into the documentation, and we go to, should be like getting started. Let's go to the back page, getting started. We can see here that we can install a couple of things. So it makes a folder and it inits a package.json, and then it installs Webpack and also Webpack CLI. And it does this thing called save --save dev. So let's go ahead and run this command, and we're going to talk about a few things. So we're starting to enter the world of dependencies that our application doesn't need, but that we need as developers. And so that --save dev installs those dependencies and saves them a particular way. So if we go back and we look at our code here, we now have a node modules folder because we installed Webpack. And we also have in our package.json a new key called dev dependencies. And we can see Webpack and Webpack CLI here. And it's important to note these because in the end, when we actually deploy our project, there's not going to be any Webpack. There's not going to be any Webpack CLI. These are tools just for our developer experience. And we wouldn't want to ship them onto the internet because that's just space and packets and kilobytes that are unneeded for the finished project. So that's one piece I want to talk about. The other piece I want to talk about is because because we're starting to get into the world of node modules and setting up stuff, there's some best practices that we want to follow. So first off, I'm going to make this a Git repo just to talk about some stuff. So we have a Git repository, and if I run git status, you'll notice that it wants to add the package.json and the package.lock.json and our node modules. But best practice does not have you add your node modules to your repo. The reason being is that there's a lot of stuff in here, and pushing all that to GitHub is kind of painful, and there's no need to have it, because with a package.json, you can delete all your node modules. And when you run just npm install, your node will actually read this package.json and see all the dependencies and go and install all of them for you. So they don't need to be added and committed to your repo. So there's another file we're going to add called .gitignore, and we're going to put node_modules there. And watch what happens when we do this. Notice that this turned gray, and when we run git status, the option to add node modules is no longer there, and that's because we don't want those committed. The gitignore file here says, hey, anything in this folder or anything in this file we're going to ignore. This is a place that you can also put things like, for Mac users, .ds_store files. You'll probably seen those a few times. Those are just Mac files that get generated, and they don't need to be in your repo. So anything that doesn't need to be in your repo, you can add here, and Git will ignore it. We'll add another thing here later, but for now, this is good enough. So we've got our package.json, we've got our dependencies installed, we got our git ignore, so we can not commit our node modules, and now we're ready to go. So in the next video, we will start setting up our project and building something. So see you then.